My name is Gareth Bowers, and I'm the CEO of Silicon Overdrive. Silicon Overdrive is an AWS Advanced partner, and we're a leading IT managed services business and have been around for over 25 years. Today, I would like to speak to you about the AWS Well-Architected Framework and how it can assist your business and the workloads that are either on AWS or that you are planning to migrate to AWS. The framework is a series of questions divided among 6 pillars that really help dive into the workload and identify if there is risk and room for opportunity, and allows us to create a roadmap with you for remediations going forward. Let us dive deeper as I provide an overview of the well-architected framework's 6 pillars and explore design principles and best practices. The first pillar is operational excellence. Some of the core design principles would be to align business with IT. This means that if IT is implementing things and there aren't processes or procedures, business needs to define those processes and assist. Use metrics to log everything that's relevant to the workload. Don't make assumptions. Validate what changes you're making and always refer back to the metrics. Always assume that the workload can be improved. Either tools or functions and languages can improve, and look at what is being done. See how your workload is changing. See how your user base has changed, and allocate time to evaluate those new offerings and see how that can be improved. The second pillar is security, which is probably the meatiest of the pillars, and it really requires a bit of a deep dive into the workload using AWS best practice and industry best practice standards for security. You want to absolutely avoid relying on security at the perimeter, and you want to really see where things can be better applied, where various services or logging or auditing can be done at the components, and that includes things like security and transit, security at rest, and what has business defined in terms of governance and compliance. It can also be looking at processes in terms of how users and privileges or access to various things has been dealt with, and whether least privilege has been granted, whether there's an onboarding or offboarding process to reviewing this on a regular basis, what sort of security auditing and logging of access to the various elements has been implemented, and really just kind of looking at the overall security of the workload. And ideally, this should be part of the design of the workload, but it can be implemented after launch. The third pillar is reliability, which is looking at the workload and making sure that it is running as it's intended to run. That means that you want to really be understanding whether or not your workload can auto-scale or self-heal, whether you do have single points of failure. Then don't guess capacity. Look at the metrics. Understand what is the smallest size compute you can run on, and then implement auto-scaling or some sort of queuing mechanism so that you can handle spikes in traffic. You can use design patterns and reference architectures to assist the design of those components for the workload. Always create a disaster recovery and consider how failover will work, and ensure that business has defined what its recovery time objective and recovery point objective is, and regularly test your DR strategy to ensure that it is working. The fourth pillar is performance efficiency. This would be looking at whether your workload is constantly performing at an optimal point for the workload. Always consider how your workload and your user base is changing over time, and if your workload needs to evolve. Would it benefit from adding, say, a read replicate to your database? Is your write IOPS not working correctly? Do you want more of queuing mechanisms implemented or caching to assist performance? Look at the metrics and make sure that you've got metrics on each of the layers as the data flows through, so that you can make more insightful decisions around where improvements can be made. The fifth pillar is cost optimization. So this would be looking at creating a cost optimization function, or ensuring that business and IT is aligned and understand the nature of the costs of the services that are being used in the workload. It's also about regularly reviewing it and having a process to go through it. For instance, a service that might be very cost efficient for 1,000 users might not be cost efficient for 100,000 users, and there might be better ways to architect or use things. Similarly, avoid doing differentiated or undifferentiated heavy lifting, which effectively is having developers build services or build functions, which maybe there is a cloud function or a cloud product, which can therefore do that for a small cost per hour when it runs. In addition, when reviewing the workload regularly, it's important to look at the various components to see if possibly things were accelerated for speed to market or to push out new features, and cost optimization wasn't done at the time. So possibly at a later point, you can look at implementing savings plans or reserved instances or other ways of structuring it to reduce costs. The sixth pillar is sustainability. In essence, this is really understanding what the downstream footprint is of your workload. As with the other pillars, there are multiple questions and ways of looking at these. For instance, we could look at expected user behavior patterns, which could help you reduce the amount of time your staging environment is running. For argument's sake, if you've only got your staging for test for users that are being used, 9 hours a day, Monday to Friday, if you use rather scheduled instances, it could be running for 45 hours a week, whereas leaving it running 24/7 would be 168 hours a week. So that immediately reduces your footprint as well as saves you cost. Understanding the data life cycles and implementing lifecycle management rules, and then moving data that's no longer needed and moving that to maybe infrequently accessed or deleting it, can also reduce costs as well as reduce your footprint and improve sustainability. Thank you for your time, and I hope you found that informative. Please reach out if you would like any more information or have questions, or if you would like us to run a review on one of your workloads. Look forward to hearing from you. Thanks.